Alright, it's been another month, and that means I've played another month's worth of games, all of which have actually come out in 2023, and now you get to hear my thoughts about them. So let's get into what I played this April. I started off with Tchia, an open-world indie game that might have the best looking sunsets in all of video games. In it, you play as Tchia, a girl who can take control of objects and animals on a quest to save her dad. Pretty clearly, the game takes a handful of cues from Breath of the Wild, but unfortunately not really in the ways that would benefit it most. Like, from a structural standpoint, it presents a handful of mandatory missions that have some variance in terms of the order you can tackle them, but do still have that waypoint to waypoint feel. For the most part, there isn't all that much of a reason to explore the open world. There are a few useful upgrades you can find, like ones that increase stamina and ones that allow you to possess things for longer, but the vast majority of stuff you can collect is for cosmetic purposes, which may be enough incentive for some people, but it didn't get me invested in exploring the world more than I had to. The mechanic of possessing objects and animals is pretty cool, but most of the applications are relatively surface level. It's used for a few puzzles and general traversal, but not much else, and I would have loved to see a few more creative ways to use the various forms. One thing I think is worth mentioning is that the biggest inspiration for the game is the island of New Caledonia, which is where the co-founders of the studio are from. And this is something that the game itself makes abundantly clear. There's a pop-up at the start that explains that while Tchia is set in a fictional world, it draws heavy inspiration from New Caledonian culture, music, traditions, landscapes, and a bunch of other things. This knowledge puts a handful of gameplay choices into perspective. One of the main goals of the developers was to recreate the feeling of their home in this fictional world, so they included mechanics and elements that maybe don't add all that much to the core gameplay loop, but do succeed in establishing a setting that pays homage to New Caledonia. And what I find interesting about this is that normally I would want to criticize some of these elements as being unneeded fluff and just distracting from the most important parts of the game, but knowing the intent of the developers made me appreciate these things more than anything else. It shifted my expectations a bit, so I not only approached it as a video game, but also as a way to experience the vibe of a real place. To be honest, it's rare for developers to be this open about their inspirations and intent, especially within the game itself. Typically, you only hear this sort of thing in interviews, so it's interesting to see them communicate so openly about it. And I think it was a smart choice, because it at least helped me approach certain decisions they made with a more open mind. All in all, it's a chill game with some fascinating aspects that may have the same somewhat tired structure most open world games have been using for as long as I can remember, but it does stand out in other intriguing ways that keep things fresh. Also, there's a mechanic that lets you attempt to do flips and shit whenever you want, and it makes going from place to place so much more fun than it has any business being. So yeah, if you're looking for a shorter open world game, give it a look. After that, I played Dredge, a cosmic horror fishing game which, is not a genre I expected us to get to soon, but I sure am glad exists. In it, you captain a ship with the goal of finding fish, materials, treasure, and of course, cursed objects that I'm sure will not lead to any sorts of consequences. Each day, you try to gather as much stuff as you can before nightfall, as once it gets dark, it takes a toll on your character's psyche, which can lead to various bad things happening, many of which revolve around unspoken horrors of the sea. As you collect more stuff, you can get upgrades for your ship that allow you to go faster and carry more things, all aiding in your search for the various cursed objects. The core gameplay loop is satisfying and gets you in that just one more day headspace that all the best games do. There's this constant balance of trying to get things done quickly so you don't get stuck sailing at night, but also pushing your luck a bit so you can get more done in a day. On top of that, there are certain fish and occurrences that only happen at night, so sometimes you have to stay in the water after the sun goes down. This all leads to a lot of tension as you try to maximize your yield each day without letting your ship get damaged or sink. But this is where the biggest problem with Dredge arises, as there isn't a good consequence for any form of failure. For instance, when your ship takes damage, certain slots in your hull can no longer be used. Sometimes this leads to having less storage, but other times it causes damage to important items like your engines. When this happens, all you can do is slowly drift towards the nearest port. Depending on where you're at, this can take a pretty long time and also use up a decent bit of resources in order to repair it. And for the most part, it just feels like a waste of time and resources because it doesn't lead to anything. The worst part is that most of the time when this sort of thing happens, you're better off just sinking your ship, as the only consequence is having to load from your last save, which given the frequency at which most players will dock their ship, probably will only cost them 2 to 3 minutes. This severely undercuts the game's tension. Like many horror games, the encounters are only scary if you're just able to narrowly avoid them. But once you do get hit, you realize there isn't much to be scared of. This will almost certainly be a controversial take, but I think the game would have benefited from running on some sort of larger timer where the amount of days you take to complete the main objective will influence the ending you get. There are a lot of ways to do this, and I'm not sure what exactly would have been the best approach for Dredge, but but in general, I think having a bigger picture time limitation like this gives meaning to failure. Instead of reloading a save when your ship sinks, it could cost you a week, which would raise the tension of getting everything done on time. These sorts of systems can feel punishing, but I think when done well, they provide stakes and motivation that add a ton of value to a game. Not to mention, there always could be an option to play without a timer for those who don't vibe with that sort of thing. Ultimately, Dredge is a really cool game that I enjoyed and expect a lot of people will love, but it didn't hold my interest as much as I think it could have. Next up is Pizza Tower, a Wario-like 2D platformer that I think is pretty close to being a perfect game. It excels at everything it aims to do, creating a really tight, fast, and fun platformer. Its movement mechanics and general controls provide a lot of grace for new players, allowing them to hit super fast speeds without constantly being interrupted. But it also has a high skill ceiling for those who want to master all of Peppino's movement mechanics in order to get through the levels flawlessly. It just feels really good to play. Like, this is how I wish Sonic games felt. While its art style is crude, it fits the game well and is filled with amazing animations that exude creativity. Like, Peppino reacts to the way he moves around. He doesn't just hold a single face regardless of what he's doing, and this makes him feel so dynamic. So much care was put into making these animations stand out while not being distracting, which is a hard thing to balance, but done really well here. Now, admittedly, when it comes to games like this, I'm deeply on the casual side of things. I don't have much interest in mastering the mechanics or replaying levels, but for those who do want that, Pizza Tower has so much to offer. Every level tests the player's movement skills in new ways, and if they want to achieve the highly coveted P rank, they'll be pushed to their limits. I do think this game is worth it for those who like doing single playthroughs of titles and then moving on to whatever's next. There are tons of interesting ideas and rad implementations of the game's mechanics, so I'd say if you like platformers in the slightest, this is not one to miss. But if you are the type of person who loves diving deep into a game and mastering its mechanics, you owe it to yourself to check this one out. Once I was done with Pizza Tower, I jumped into The Mage Seeker, an action RPG published by Riot Forge and set in the League of Legends universe. I don't play League on principle, but ever since Arcane came out a few years ago, I've been very interested in the world of Runeterra. And I think Riot Forge's mission of hiring talented indie studios to develop a diverse set of games using the League IP is pretty cool. The developers for The Mage Seeker previously made Moonlighter, which I thoroughly enjoyed, so I've had my eye on this game since it was announced, and it didn't disappoint. Going in, I knew nothing about the protagonist Silas, but his story is a complex and fascinating one, and his ability lends itself well to be a core gameplay mechanic. Essentially, he can use chains to channel the magic of other people, so while in combat, you constantly jump between absorbing the powers of enemies to unleash their own magic against them and hitting them with physical attacks. Certain types of magic is powerful against certain types of enemies, so in fighting, you often have to be strategic about the order you kill things in. Like, let's say you're fighting a bunch of fire and ice guys and kill all of the ice guys first. That then will make it much harder to take out the rest of the fire guys. So instead, it's better to spread out the damage before finishing enemies off. It's a fun system and leads to a handful of intense fights. Where the game really shines though is with its bosses. Pretty much all of them are stellar, and depending on your skill level and what difficulty you're playing on, will challenge you in just the right way. Now, there were a few things I was disappointed by, mainly that I was hoping it would have something similar to the shop in Moonlighter, and it kind of does with its whole building a rebellion thing, but all of it is pretty simple and none of the management type choices are all that meaningful. This isn't a huge issue, but given Digital Sun's skill set, I'd hope for something more complex. All in all though, it's a fun game with some great fights, and if you're looking for a way to get into League of Legends without playing League of Legends, this is a solid enough way to do so. And while on games using their IPs in unique ways, I also played The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a visual novel released on April Fool's Day where you assist Tails in solving the murder of Sonic at a murder mystery party. I don't really know what to say about the game itself, as there isn't much to it. It's got some fun writing, a good enough Sonic minigame, and a few moments where you actually have to put the mystery together, but overall it's pretty simple and mostly just serves as a cute little gimmick, which to be clear isn't a dig. I think doing an April Fool's joke like this is a lot of fun, and I love when developers use their IPs in surprising and imaginative ways. I don't personally love visual novels, so this didn't do all that much for me, but I am really happy they made it, as I want to see studios experiment with the types of games they make and not always be beholden to using their characters in only one specific way. It's also free, so that's cool too. Last up was Storyteller, a puzzle game where you are tasked with crafting a story that matches its title. With each puzzle, you are given different characters and settings, and you need to put the pieces together in a way that leads to the desired result. This starts off pretty simple, but as the game goes on and more pieces are introduced, things get way more complicated and interesting. Most of the puzzles puzzles have multiple different ways to be solved, and a few even challenge you to find these alternate ways. I do think it would have been cool if every puzzle had challenged you to find an alternate way to solve it, as I really enjoyed having to look at something I had just figured out through a new lens, but I get that not every puzzle is as interesting to solve in different ways. Now, the game is pretty short. As I've established in the past, I don't really care about the length of a game as long as it feels like a complete experience. And with Storyteller, it kind of felt like it ended right when it was starting to get really good. The last couple sets of puzzles really tap into the potential of the game, and right when I expected things to ramp up even more, it was just done. I felt like it was worth my money, but I still wanted to see more. I really hope the devs continue with this concept, as I think there is so much more there to explore, and I'd love to see these ideas get expanded upon in a bigger project. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you next month unless I decide to stop doing this. Bye.